Good evening. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, we welcome you to this evening's virtual District 3 Colorado State Board of Education Candidate Forum. My name is Jean Arrow, and I'm the president of the La Plata League. With me tonight is fellow League member Deb Rogers, who will be our moderator. This is the first time that we have conducted a forum for the State Board of Education that will be available across the 3rd District. We are very pleased to have Joyce Rankin and Dr. Mayling Simpson join us tonight. The 3rd District is the largest geographical district in Colorado. It covers the western third of the state and spreads across the southern part of the state as far east as Pueblo. The population in our district is just over 750,000 people, based on a 2018 estimate. The local leagues across the 3rd District have come together tonight to sponsor this forum. They include the leagues of Mesa, Montrose and Delta, Montezuma, La Plata, Gunnison Valley, Pueblo, and San Luis Valley, which includes Rio Grande, Saguache, and Alamosa counties. Our other partners are Fort Lewis College, KSUT, and Four Corners Radio, which is broadcasting this forum live on KIUP 930 AM and 97.3 FM. Thank you to all of our sponsors. This year in Colorado, we have a very full ballot. In addition to presidential, senatorial, state legislator, judges, Board of Education candidates, we also have 11 statewide ballot issues. Through our candidate and ballot issue forum, we want to encourage voters to vote the full ballot. The League is committed to provide voters with opportunities to learn about candidates and ballot issues so that they can vote from a position of confidence and knowledge. Tonight, we'll be learning about the very important role that the State Board of Education plays in Colorado. This is a historic year for the League of Women Voters. We celebrated our 100th anniversary in February, and it is not coincident that in August, we also celebrated the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage. Since the beginning, the League has focused on voter education, providing nonpartisan information to voters so that they have the knowledge and the confidence to exercise their rights to vote. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that encourages informed and active participation of citizens in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Participating in and hosting candidate and ballot issue forums is just one of the many activities that the League engages in to accomplish our mission. The League does not support or oppose candidates or political parties, but we do support and oppose issues that do or do not agree with our state and national positions. So we welcome those of you joining us by Zoom, those of you joining us by our Facebook Live feed, and those of you joining us on the radio. This forum is also being broadcast live on Durango Government Television. DGov TV is also recording the forum, and it will be available for on-demand viewing at the DGov Television YouTube channel and on our LWV La Plata Facebook page under the video tab. So encourage your friends and neighbors to tune in later if they've missed listening live tonight. On to the candidate forum. Deb, it's all yours.
Great, thanks, Jean. So one of the neat things about the League of Women Voters Candidate Forum is that members of the audience get to ask the questions of the candidates about issues that interest them and hear the answers directly from the candidates without edit or filter, making it more like a town hall meeting than a debate. Tonight, we are joined by the two candidates for the job of representing Colorado's 3rd District on the State Board of Education, Joyce Rankin and Dr. Mayling Simpson. The Colorado Board of Education is the governing board of the Colorado Department of Education. The board's mission is to provide all of Colorado's children equal access to quality, thorough, uniform, well-rounded educational opportunities in a safe and civil learning environment. The powers and the duties of the board include providing educational leadership for the state, accrediting public school districts, regulating educator licensing, appointing the Commissioner of Education, distributing federal and state funds, making rules, regulations, and policies for public education, including pre-K through 12, adult education, and public libraries, and approving the Department of Education budget, which is currently $7.5 billion, which is 23% of the entire state of Colorado budget. So this is a very important position. Here are the guidelines for asking questions. So many of you took advantage of the opportunity to submit questions in advance. You can also submit questions during this forum via the Q&A function on Zoom. Please note that the chat button has been disabled for this forum. Also, we will not be taking questions via Facebook Live feed. Questions must be framed to apply to both candidates. Please keep questions concise and avoid political pontificating or personal attacks. As your moderator, I will read the questions to the candidates. League members Diana Goodchild and Trish Pigram reviewed the questions that were submitted in advance, consolidated those on the same topic to avoid repetition, and clarified as needed. Questions that are not relevant to the office for which the candidate is running will not be included. League member Karen McManus is assisting me tonight with questions submitted during the forum. We will try to cover a wide range of relevant topics, but all questions may not be asked due to time constraints. We will forward all questions to the candidates afterwards, however, for their consideration. Candidates and the League have agreed on the following guidelines. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement, and then 1 minute to answer each subsequent question before delivering a 2-minute closing statement. There is a timer on the screen to keep the candidates on track. Thank you, Mitchell. Tonight's timer is Mitchell Carter from Durango Government Television. The order in which the candidates will give their opening statement was determined by random drawing before the forum, and that order will be reversed for closing statements. As I mentioned, there are 2 candidates running for the Colorado State Board of Education District 3. For the Republicans, it's Joyce Rankin, who's the incumbent, and for Democrats, Dr. Mayling Simpson. We will begin with opening comments. Based on the drawing, here is the order. First, Joyce Rankin, and second, Mayling Simpson. So we'll begin. Joyce, feel free with your opening comments. You have 2 minutes. And make sure to unmute.
Okay, it's working now. Sorry about that. I wanted to thank the League for inviting me and having this forum tonight. I represent the 3rd Congressional District on the State Board of Education. My background is in elementary education. At 10 years old, I told my parents I wanted to be a 5th grade teacher. After graduation from high school, I went on and got a bachelor's degree in elementary education, master's degree in elementary education with a minor in English language arts, and also earned an administrative credential. I taught 5th grade, 6th grade, kindergarten, 1st grade, and have experience as an elementary school principal. Later on, I studied computers and started a small business with my husband in a resort community. He installed the hardware and the computers, and I taught software to beginning adults as if they were 1st graders. I hold certification as a Microsoft Office user specialist from Delta Technical College. My credentials in education and technology have prepared me well to continue on in the State Board of Education. Because of my background, I've been interested in the fact that 40% of our 3rd graders are reading at grade level. In 2012, the legislature passed the READ Act, Reading to Ensure Academic Development. $250 million later, in 2018, the needle had not moved. Still, there were only 40% of 3rd graders reading at grade level. After taking online courses in the science of teaching reading, I fully supported the READ Act and promoted it, Senate Bill 199. This time, the bill included, among other things, accountability. It included a free teacher re-education too, and a curriculum that aligns with Colorado standards. The most important role of a teacher, I believe, is to prepare students to become successful readers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rankin. And next up, we have Dr. Mayling Simpson. And please remember to unmute yourself, unlike me.
So thank you also, League of Women Voters, for holding this event. I am Mayling Simpson. I live in Routt County in Steamboat Springs. The State Board of Education election this year is more important than ever because of COVID-19 and all the disruption that is caused, and also because of the recent and future cuts to school funding due to this pandemic. As such, I am proud to have the endorsement of over 30,000 of Colorado's teachers, the Colorado Education Association, and the American Federation of Teachers. I too, like Joyce, am a former educator. I've taught both at the high school and university levels. I used to teach 10th grade biology, and I have taught quite a few university courses in anthropology. I have a PhD in anthropology, and as such, I have a sensitivity to local cultures and communities. I have served on my local school board, and I have over 30 years of experience in global public health. I can bring my public health background and education background to the board. My focus is on the public education of Colorado's children, the funding, the graduation rates, and vocational training. Colorado kids, teachers, and parents all deserve a strong voice on the State Board of Education, someone who will fight for safer, stronger, and well-funded schools. I believe that person is me. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Now we'll cover questions from the audience. And I'll be alternating back and forth between you, the two candidates, as to who goes first. So we'll start with Ms. Rankin. Could you briefly explain what the State Board of Education does and doesn't have purview over?
Thank you.
Remember the meeting, yes.
Thank you, Deb. Many people think that the state board is in charge of all of the schools and can make changes within the schools or the school district. That's not true. We live in a state that believes in local control. And for rural Colorado, it's very important to allow local control for flexibility within the school and the district. So when parents call me or send me an email and they're upset about something that's going on in their school, I have to tell them they need to talk to their local board. That's where the decision making is, right there at their local board, their superintendent. And if they have a problem in the classroom, they need to talk to the teacher and the principal at that school. Once they understand that and understand that I cannot walk in and make drastic changes, it's very helpful to them. And also, what we do basically is make rules that go along with the laws that the legislature passes. In the past, this Bill 199, Senate Bill 199 on the READ Act, not only did we make rules that went with that, we are also promoting it throughout the district. And I've been to some districts and educating parents and teachers about what the science of teaching reading is and evidence-based results. If it's taught this way, it's a scope and sequence. If it's taught this way, students will learn. And we need to convert all of our K-3 and beyond is going to be the next step to get them all reading at grade level. It's very important.
Great, thank you. And next, Dr. Simpson, could you briefly explain what the State Board of Education does and doesn't have purview over?
I think the best way to express this is that the State Board of Education sets the norms and standards for our public education system. So that involves content of curriculum, teacher training, what are the standards and norms and standards for teacher training, accreditation of school districts, testing platforms, and we oversee public libraries. We do not oversee the funding. The legislature does that, but the Board of Education advises on the distribution of funding around the districts. And as Joyce mentioned, we should not overrule local control because we are a local control state. And as much as possible, we try to encourage school districts to make their own decisions in their own best interest. Thank you.
Okay. Next up, Dr. Simpson, if you can answer, and I'm going to remind you, we actually have 1 minute for answers to questions instead of opening statements. Okay. So what influence does the Board of Education have on local school boards? And Dr. Simpson, you're up first.
Local school boards.
Correct.
I believe that what we do is we remind them of the norms and standards. We help them when they have problems. They can come to us. We can be a conduit of communication between them and the rest of the school board and the legislature. But the influence, I would say, would be those norms and standards that I mentioned earlier, as well as problem solving.
Okay. And next, Ms. Rankin.
Thank you. On the
Please
state,
let me know if you need to repeat the question. Otherwise, I won't.
you want to, if you'd like to, you
No.
may.
If you would like me to, I can.
Okay, I think I have it. The state board has really no connection at all to the local school boards. If they ask us questions, of course we can answer them. I do not have direct communication with school board members locally, but I have had them contact me, or I have met with a couple of them just because they wanted to know what it was that we did up at the state level. A lot of people do not understand what the State Board of Education does, and I totally understand that. But I have been going to superintendent meetings. There's a West Slope superintendent organization, and I go there and I get a lot of information from the superintendents, and I can hear what's going on in their districts. And some of it is extremely interesting for others to hear. They share ideas and they share best practices with other districts. So that's the communication as close as I would get to the local boards.
Okay, next question. Ms. Rankin, schools are chronically underfunded in Colorado. What are your recommendations to address this issue?
Boy, that's a good one. And I think every district, if you talk about underfunded, they would have different areas that they would put money if they had extra money to spend. It's the legislature and the Joint Budget Committee that gives out the money, and it funnels through the department. And we have strict formulas that we go on as to how much money is allocated out there. I know it doesn't matter what job they are. People sometimes would always want to have more money, wouldn't we all? But we just don't have it. And districts, especially rural districts, do a great job of allocating their resources and using community organizations to help out in some areas. So right now, the way money is so tight, I don't know that we're going to be able to put more money into education. In fact, we've done a lot of cuts into the grant programs in the past year.
Okay. And Dr. Simpson, again, schools are chronically underfunded in Colorado. What are your recommendations to address this issue?
This is a long-term issue. I'm afraid it will take a long time to straighten out our budgeting. We have serious structural flaws. I'm sorry, something popped up on my screen. In our funding, there's a 2019 study that studied these structural flaws, but did not give us recommendations. We have something called a fiscal thicket around funding in Colorado. So my recommendation is two things. One, we must repeal the Gallagher Amendment because it's had unintended negative consequences on our school funding. The second thing is that we need to make our voters more aware that we must raise more funding for our schools because the funding is badly inadequate, and I am not sure the taxpayers as a whole understand this. Thank you.
Okay, next question. Dr. Simpson, what would you recommend to local school boards regarding holding classes during the COVID pandemic?
That is a very complex question, a very vexing question. But what I feel from my public health background is that we should have a formula based on the number of new cases over a 2-week period per 100,000 population, and this number should guide us. I think it's probably fine for some districts with very low numbers to have all in-person education. Others need to have a blended education of maybe kids going 2 days a week, and other systems need to close. And it really depends upon the infection rates and the rate of new cases coming up. And this should be looked at probably on a weekly basis. So the school districts are going to have to be very nimble.
Okay, and now Ms. Rankin, again, what would you recommend to local school boards regarding holding classes during the pandemic?
My first recommendation, and I want to go back to when this started, there were several counties in the 3rd Congressional District. Of course, we have a lot of counties that didn't have any cases of COVID, yet the broad brush out of Denver closed everything down. I couldn't agree more with working at the local level with local health professionals, and that's what our local boards have done. Our superintendents and local boards have worked with the local health professionals in order to determine whether schools should be open, whether they should be closed and all remote. And I find a great deal of creativity the way they've been using this blended learning. And I think we'll have a lot of positive things coming out of this for the next surge if we have it, but we do have to watch it carefully.
Okay, and I'm going to actually take a question from the live audience, and League Member Karen McManus will be asking this next question. And Ms. Rankin, you're up next to start.
Yes, Ms. Rankin, the question is, what is your position on establishing a uniform mill levy for schools?
That's an interesting question, and I think there should be some uniformity in that, but I have some districts, some counties that just cannot afford to raise mill levies. And I know we have inequities in education across the 3rd Congressional District. We just need to dramatically change this unequal formula that we use at the CDE and through the legislature at allocating. It is allocating the resources. It's not equitable among all of the districts. We have some very poor districts. We have some school districts that could raise as much money as they want at any time. And it's just not fair. It's a fairness issue across the 3rd CD. That's where I see it.
And Dr. Simpson, do you need the question repeated, or?
No, that's fine. It's whether we should have a uniform mill levy across all the counties. Correct. So my answer is not really very different from Joyce Rankin. I think she's right on the money there talking about this. I think there are some districts that can raise lots of money quite easily. Maybe not quite easily, but they do succeed at it. And I live in one such district. There are other districts that simply cannot afford to raise their mill levies. So we have to solve this problem in a different way than the mill levies. It is unfortunate in many parts of the state, and in many states actually, that local districts have to pay 50% of the education bill. I would like to see us find a better formula than the one that we have. So here is where Joyce and I very much agree on the complexity of this problem and the complexity of solving it, but we must address it.
Okay, and next, the next question, we'll go to Dr. Simpson first. What are your opinions regarding public, charter, and private schools particularly state and local funding priorities?
I am neutral when it comes to charter schools. I think when they are justified, when the district cannot fulfill a need that is felt by the parents in a district, it's fine to have a charter school. We have two great charter schools here in Routt County, both of which were highly justified. Some of the justifications might be distance from the school or providing a curriculum that parents want. I do not think that we should do a lot of charter schools because they draw money away from our public school system. If we had plenty of money, it would be a different story. But our school system, our public school systems are very strapped. And so every child that leaves a public school and goes to a charter schools are public schools, but when they go to a different public school, when they go to a charter school, they do pull money away from the larger system. And so we have to make these decisions very, very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Rankin, how about you? What are your opinions regarding public, charter, and private schools, particularly with state and local funding priorities?
I believe that it's not right to not allow parents to select a school that's better suited to their child. And it might be a school in another district that they would drive their student to because they preferably would like to have their child go to a school next door, maybe in a next community down the road that's not their local school. I also think that parents should have the choice for charter schools too, because where do charters come from except parents that feel there's a need in the local district to create one? I fully believe in charter schools and the fact that parents have that choice. In rural areas, I know it's more difficult. We don't have that great choice, but there have been a lot of online choices through the BOCES that have allowed students that want extra coursework in math courses that their teacher can't teach, they can do it online elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Ms. Rankin, what policies would you call for to lessen high school student dropouts?
To lessen high school?
To lower the dropout rate.
The number of dropouts? Well, I think we have a lot of online courses and schools around third CD that help keep students in a school environment, even though they cannot go to their local high school for whatever reasons. A lot of them have jobs and they drop out of school to support their families. And that's totally understandable. More online courses or schools have been able to help students because they can go to school for free until they're 21. And I think in order to keep students in school and how to keep them interested and active, I think we need to keep our standards high. I think we need to involve the students in what types of courses they would like to see taught there. But I don't think lowering our standards is the answer to have 100% high school graduates. It's not correct.
Okay, and Ms. Simpson?
Yes, there are a variety of reasons why students do not graduate from high school. Some are emotional reasons. Some are reasons that they have not kept up in reading and they cannot read at level. Some are problems at home. Sometimes parents are pressuring their children to work or to quit school. So my solution would be that we try to identify these children at a much younger age, 5th grade or 6th grade, as is done in the city of Baltimore, which has had a wonderful program in raising graduation rates. So it's a question of really identifying these kids as early as possible and mentoring them to keep them in school in one way or another, which might involve some online courses or might not. It might just be helping them overcome some reading issues or some emotional issues or some home issues or poverty issues that are keeping them from graduating.
Okay, and we have another question that's come in live. And Ms. Simpson, I'll start with you. And Karen McManus is going to ask that question.
Yes. This was a follow-up question to the earlier one about your opinion regarding public, charter, or private schools. It says, what is your stand on privatization of schools?
On privatization of our public schools? If that's the question, I would totally oppose that. I think that it is we have made a contract. Our citizens, our taxpayers have made a contract with our society to provide free public education to all children, no matter what their background. And we must uphold that contract. So I am not at all in favor of privatization of schools, if that is what the question is. Now, regarding parent choice, parents do have choices in Colorado. Nobody is denying any parent from making a choice. We have open enrollment. They can go to charter schools. They can go to any public schools, and if they choose at their own expense, they can go to private schools. So there's no obstacles to that, actually. I hope I have addressed the question as it was asked. Thank you.
Okay, and next, Ms. Rankin.
I still struggle with the question, and I agree with a lot of what Mayling has said. I do hear important issues of special needs students and needing more individualized help. And I think during COVID, all of a sudden things surfaced that we had not seen before or we were not ready for, not only in regular everyday school, but special needs students that are struggling readers. You cannot put a first grader in front of a computer when you're learning the science of teaching reading. It just won't work. Students that have dyslexia, struggle with reading, they need a lot of extra help. If the parent decides to put them in a private school and pay for it, I agree, that's up to them. But I'm not real clear on what the question was. But I do feel parents do have that choice of private school right now.
Okay, moving on. Next question, and Ms. Rankin, start with you. Is civics still being taught throughout Colorado? There seems to be a lack of basic civics knowledge by our residents.
Yes, I think we need to define the word civics like we did privatization of schools. We do, there is a requirement at the high school level. It's just one course that's taught, and I'm not quite sure what the credits are for that. And it's again, local control. What they teach, how they teach it, it comes from the local district. And I understand this question because some people think civics should be taught differently than what they're seeing in their school currently. And a lot of questions along those lines also help local districts define what they want when they're teaching civics and what their high schools need. And parents can go to the board and talk about what they want to see in their school. They do have a right to do that. Many of them don't understand that, but go to their local board meetings and let their voice be heard.
And Dr. Simpson?
Could you please repeat the question? This is one question I want to hear again.
Absolutely. Is civics still being taught throughout Colorado? There seems to be a lack of basic civics knowledge by our residents.
Well, I know civics is supposed to be taught across Colorado. I haven't done a survey to find out whether that is being done adequately or even at all. If you look across our nation, it appears that we're failing in every state to teach civics properly. There are an awful lot of people in our country today who seem not to understand our Constitution, not to understand our system of government. And so whatever we're doing in Colorado or elsewhere, it appears to be inadequate. But I cannot tell you specifically why it is inadequate, but I would say that one thing I have been concerned about and have put on my website from the beginning was that I think we need to improve civics education here in Colorado and all across the country.
Okay, this next one's a little long, so bear with me. And Dr. Simpson, we'll start with you. Do you support the recent push to fully audit all of the accountability and assessments systems for Colorado schools and districts to ensure that they're actually measuring what is important to our schools, our districts, and our stakeholders, and why or why not?
Okay, so I'm not very familiar with this topic. So this is a question that's really difficult for me to answer, an area that I'm going to have to learn about. But accountability in general is extremely important. We have to know whether our system is working for our kids or not. So I would say in general, I support accountability, but I cannot answer the specifics of this question.
Okay. And Ms. Rankin, I'll reread. Do you support the recent push to fully audit all of the accountability and assessment systems for Colorado schools and districts to ensure that they're actually measuring what is important to our schools, our districts, and our stakeholders? Why or why not?
I believe, and I believe our board, we struggle with this, we don't struggle with it. We all believe there should be accountability. I do agree with that. The audit of accountability, I'm not quite sure what that is. But accountability, we're finding with COVID and some of the money being taken out of schools for grants have surfaced. A lot of these grants that we've read and said, gee, maybe they should have been taken away a long time ago. So I think it's good that we review everything that we're doing and on a regular basis so that we're not wasting money on overlapping grants and other things that are just being redundant. But accountability comes up a lot more now at the board, in board meetings, than it has in the past. So I know the board as a whole believes we have to be accountable, especially in the testing situation too.
Okay. And again, back to you, Ms. Rankin. In Durango, many elementary reading intervention positions have recently been eliminated due to budget cuts. Furthermore, teachers are already noticing a decline in K-3 students' literacy skills this year when students return to school after nearly 6 months at home. Should READ Act requirements be loosened or modified to account for classroom teachers already over full plates, less intervention support, and an increase in the number of students on the READ plan?
Boy, let's see. This one's 1 minute. Is that what the, okay.
Oh, sorry.
I believe since we have this READ Act and the teacher training does not cost anything, it's easy to use COVID as an excuse for everything that is kind of falling apart. But I think reading is so important if teachers do very little but focus on it. And they have to focus on the science of teaching reading, not just reading to students or having parents read to students, although that is very, very important. That's a part of this whole program. And in districts where they understand and have trained their teachers on the science of teaching reading, test scores have gone up. I know in Moffat County, all of the teachers were trained, and you could just watch the same students in first grade, second grade, third grade, and the scores went up. So I would never eliminate reading, and the board is focused on the READ Act. I know that as a group.
Okay, and Dr. Simpson, I'll just reread the second part. Should READ Act requirements be loosened or modified to account for classroom teachers already over full plates, less intervention support, and an increase in the number of students on the READ plan?
Interestingly, I've been holding quite a lot of forums with different teachers groups in CD3, and this topic has come up to me a lot. They tell me that they are overworked and overstressed from COVID-19, so that some teachers, but not all teachers, feel that they will have a really hard time getting their licensure under this mandate of the READ Act. So perhaps we should throw this back to local control. Perhaps we should be flexible. I know my own daughter, who is a teacher in Hayden, Colorado, is under extreme stress and overwork this year due to the changes brought about by COVID-19. So I'm very sympathetic to this problem. I agree with Joyce that we should not lower our standards too much.
Okay, and Dr. Simpson, please explain how Tabor has helped or hurt school funding in Colorado. the taxpayer bill of rights for everyone.
This is a very complex topic, and I don't know that I can say it in 1 minute. But the Tabor Amendment prevents us from raising taxes unless the voters approve a rise in those taxes. The Gallagher Amendment has resulted in a lowering, a gradual lowering of taxes coming in from residential properties because of the way the law is written. So Tabor interferes with us raising taxes for schools when we need to raise them. And I'm hoping after we end the Gallagher Amendment that we can also recall the Tabor Amendment, because I do think they have made our school funding way too complex and they interfere tremendously. Thank you.
And Ms. Rankin, next, please explain how Tabor has helped or hurt school funding in Colorado.
Our total spending in Colorado is below the Tabor limit. Tabor is not the problem with education in Colorado. The problem is the formula that needs to be redone and revamped. And that is a major complex issue that we do not have oversight on. But Tabor is not the issue. We're below the Tabor limit in our state.
Okay, and Ms. Rankin, what can be done to close ineffective charter schools?
Ineffective?
Ineffective, correct.
Well, they are held to accountability by the parents that have started the charter. And there have been some charter schools that have not met the standards that they should in their frameworks and reviews. And some of them, they have gone by the wayside. We have, especially if they're on turnaround status, that sort of thing, the 5 years that they have to get out of turnaround, meaning more and more students going to the lower tiers and not learning as much as they should and being evaluated. And that can be done locally with the parents. They can take the charter away, or it can come before us. And it can go both ways, and it has gone both ways when it comes before the board.
And Dr. Simpson, what can be done to close ineffective charter schools?
I believe there is a review system for charter schools already, and it involves both the parents, as Joyce said, and I believe it also involves the local superintendent and the local school board, so that we do have a system in place. I do believe some charter schools have been closed because they haven't been effective. And so I don't know that this is really an issue, but I have not served on the State Board of Education yet, so these cases have not come before me. And this is another area of learning for me.
Okay, we've got time for, looks like 1 or 2 more questions. So let's, again, Dr. Simpson, to what degree are students in this district or other Colorado schools on track for post-secondary readiness, and how do we know?
Are on track for post-secondary readiness? Well, we know that about 57% of our Colorado high school graduates go on to college, and that is a pretty good record. So we must be preparing us, more than half of them successfully to go on to college. But I'm not totally clear on your question. Sorry.
Maybe are there any that you would see to?
Well, just the ones that we have in place is the only ones, that I don't know of any further ones.
Okay, and Ms. Rankin, to what degree are students in this district or other Colorado schools on track for post-secondary readiness, and how do we know?
The way I look at it is the students that are graduating from high school and going on to college, how many have to take remediation courses? That determines how well that high school prepared them for college. Now, I have a district where the students, there are 80% of them, were in high school graduating class, only 80% of them would graduate. That superintendent changed it so it was 100%. However, those students that went on to college had to take remediation. 60% of those that went on to college had to be remediated in the first year. The next year it went down to 50%, so he felt he was doing better. That is not the guide that I look at, where they go post high school and then we determine what we did. We have got to make sure that they are reaching the goal of graduation legitimately when they receive their diploma.
Great. So now that concludes the question section of our forum, and we will allow 2 minutes for closing statements for each person. And we'll go in reverse order that we did the opening statements. So Dr. Simpson, you would go first with your closing statements, please.
Okay, well, thank you very much for this opportunity to introduce myself to the CD3 voters. I very much appreciate that. My biggest concern is the funding of our public schools in Colorado, which is uneven and not equitable because we have problems with our tax structure. As such, I would advocate for repealing the Gallagher Amendment because of its unintended negative consequences on school funding. And I will fight for equitable school funding, especially for our rural schools. The State Board of Education is the state's most important education body. It works directly with the legislature to support public education, and I'm ready to do that work. We need to keep politics out of school. We need to commit to working closely with local school districts and support their decisions. And I wish to be a voice for rural Colorado schools, for the teachers, most importantly, the students and the parents. Thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Simpson. And now Ms. Rankin, your closing statements, please.
Thank you, and thank you for this opportunity. My credentials in education and technology have prepared me well to continue on the State Board of Education. I'm competitive and I love a challenge. I ran in the United States Olympic trials in the marathon. I know what a challenge is. With COVID, I see educational opportunity for our students. Through technology and creative learning models, future students will be able to pursue their education through a variety of pathways. Remote and online learning will allow teachers to continue to learn newer ways to educate students and guide them through these current and future challenges. For students to be lifelong learners and take advantage of the opportunities available to them, I go back to the most important role of a teacher, and that is to prepare students to become successful readers. This is why the Denver Post and Stand for Children endorsed me this year. My work is not done.
Thank you. This concludes tonight's forum. I want to thank the candidates for participating and for their willingness to serve. And thanks to all of you who submitted questions and who have joined us virtually. A special thanks to Four Corners Radio for broadcasting this forum, and to the City of Durango and Durango Government Television for broadcasting and recording this forum for replay and on-demand viewing. Be sure to visit the website vote411.org for information about the candidates in all of the races across the state. Vote411.org is also your one-stop shop for voter registration and general voter information. To verify your voter registration, visit the website govotecolorado.com. And most importantly, thank you to our viewers and the citizens of this great district. Thank you for taking your voting responsibilities seriously. It's you who make our democracy work. Remember, ballots will be mailed on October 9th, and Election Day is November 3rd. And please remember to vote the full ballot. Thank you for joining us tonight, and good night.